second?
Second?
All in favor? Oops.
Oh, wait.
Is this the time when I pull something off the agenda?
Yes.
Off the agenda or
Off the
Or to be
consent?
On consent, you could pull that off when we get to consent, because that would be the motion to approve consent.
Sorry about that, I told her wrong.
Okay.
Well, it's been back and forth. But
Okay.
I'm just trying to get us to understand what we actually do.
Just wait till you get to consent.
Okay.
Okay, so, since we have approval of the agenda, okay, Madam Secretary, would you take us into executive session?
We didn't vote on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
I'm
just
sorry.
have a-
Oh, I did. I said, oh, I thought I
And then
did.
she's,
Oh, and then she stopped. Okay,
Mm,
all in
stop.
favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Madam President. Pursuant to Sections 10-15-1H27 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, I move to convene into executive session to discuss the following matters. A, limited personnel matters, NMSA 1978-10-15-1H2, and threatened or pending litigation, NMSA 1978-10-15-1H7.
All right, let's take a roll call. Board Member Carrillo?
Yes.
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 Yes. We're in executive session.
Certainly, Madam President. I move to reconvene from executive session in which items discussed were limited to items under NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H27.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote of the members. Steve?
Yes.
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 Yes, that's a lot of Steves. We're back from executive session. Are there any board announcements? All right, Ms. Bea?
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, audience. My name is Alma Bejar. I will be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar. Si gustan traducción en español, yo les puedo asistir. Gracias.
Next, we move on to superintendent announcements.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We have two recognitions this evening. Is Lynn here? There she is. We would like to present a certificate of recognition for her dedicated work in being a volunteer at both Santa Fe High and Mandela. She's completed a third year of bringing countless tutors to Santa Fe High School and for the second year at Mandela. She helps coordinate volunteer tutors to assist in classrooms. These tutors have been instrumental in helping our students succeed academically. With the board, please join me in presenting this award to Ms. Heffron down here. Thank you. Eventually, we'll have to figure out how to make this logistically work better. Is John Makukas here? I am pleased to welcome Mr. Makukas of the Rotary Arts Committee, who is here to present us with a check for $6,000 in support of our art and music programs. As we work to strengthen our place in the 21st century global economy, the arts equip students with a creative competitive edge, qualities that can't be measured on a test. The arts provide the skills and knowledge students need to develop creativity, innovation, and determination, which are essential skills in a competitive workforce. But more importantly, art and music make our world just a little more beautiful. It is through the arts that we maintain and build culture and celebrate our diversity. Santa Fe Public Schools is blessed to be part of a community that is dedicating to enriching our teachers and students in the arts. Our arts programs are strong in part because of the generosity of community organizations like the Rotary Club. We'd like to recognize the Rotary Arts Committee and would welcome John Makukas to come join us.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us here. We have the Rotary Club of Santa Fe Foundation Arts Committee members And we've been working wonderfully with Amy and with Leanne, putting together a program to help support the visual arts, musical arts in the school programs. So we'll be funding next school year mentorships, individual student lessons, workshops, lots of hands-on, and also helping classroom teachers integrate arts into their curriculum as well. And as many of us can attest who are current or past artists and musicians, the arts offer so much to our curriculum, and I couldn't have said it better, Superintendent Garcia, as far as what the arts can do to help further one's education and being able to think. So thank you for having us.
Did you enjoy the law conference?
Yeah, I did. I really liked the presentation they did on de minimis for, based on the new law and how it's going to affect special ed or not. And having been a special ed teacher a long time ago, I thought, oh, gosh, yeah, I like coming there. But I sensed, I thought, what's going on?
I stayed out of the conference. I heard something late last year, and there's a growing group of us. And there's stuff that's down the bottom complained about this. Yeah. And I stayed out of it this year because there's a conflict.
All right, my next announcement has to do with, and this information will be on our website, but I thought you might want to know, and our audience may want to know, about the Gates Scholarship information was sent out via email to all staff district-wide, but the Gates Scholarship is a full scholarship for exceptional Pell-eligible minority high school seniors. Starting in 2018, the scholarship will be awarded to 300 student leaders each year. And phase one of the application will open July 15th, 2017. So if you know of students that might want to avail themselves, and you can also refer students by visiting the TGS website at www.thegatesscholarship.org. We will have a link on our website, but just wanted you to be aware. I know you all try to push these scholarship opportunities for our kids. We also have some grant news. The Gates, yes.
What are we doing to let counselors know?
Well, we've sent this information out to all the staff already.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just, a way to follow up with counselors on that specifically, because they would know better than anyone.
Right. We did send this out.
Great.
And made sure that staff had that, but wanted the public, just in general, to be aware. Also, yes, ma'am.
Want to back up a moment for Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. I'm sorry I missed it under board announcements. I did want to just say, you know, Maya, our former student board member, came and assisted me for a whole day over at the legislature, the second day, or the first day of the special session. And she was an incredible asset. She, line by line, went through the budget to make sure that I wasn't voting on something that I didn't know I was voting on. But her leadership skills that she developed here and the relationship was really great. And I just wanted to report that she had been of great help. She's doing well and is back for just a little bit from college. Thank you, Board President.
Thank you. Superintendent? Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's fine. Just wanted you to know, kudos to our wellness department. The Office of Student Wellness was awarded funding from the Santa Fe County Community Services Department for their Accountable Health Community Navigation Initiative grant in the amount of $75,000. And this is a one-year grant with an opportunity to reapply for 3 years. These funds will be used to provide comprehensive wraparound services to all expectant and parenting students enrolled in the Santa Fe Public Schools Teen Parenting Program in an effort to remove health care and well-being barriers for expecting and parenting students and their children. So I'm really proud of them that they wrote this successful grant. Also, out-of-state travel, the ECO Skills USA National Championship to Louisville, Kentucky, June 19th through the 24th. Just to have you be aware of that.
How many students are going?
Let me see if I have that on here. I don't think I have the student number,
Okay,
but I can provide that to you,
that's all right.
Madam President. And then.
Well, hold on. So this
Instead of
is-
saying, hold on, could you raise your hand
Well,
and
I
be
do raise my hand,
acknowledged?
but no one.
I didn't see you, okay. Board Member Carrillo?
For out-of-state travel, so this is for the eco school?
This is the Eco Skills USA National Championship.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused.
It's one student, and this is in my announcements for some reason, because it's also, isn't it also on the, is it just here only? Yeah. So it's the I shouldn't call it ECO Auto Collision student. Thomas Shea is a New Mexico Skills USA Auto Collision and Refinishing gold medalist. And he will be attending the National Skills USA Conference this summer from Monday, June 19th through Saturday, June 24th in Louisville, Kentucky. And so they're requesting the public schools in New Mexico for the National Skills USA for them to attend this refinishing competition. And Chris Coriz is the auto tech teacher, will be accompanying him, and his travel will be covered by the Perkins Basic Grant for 2016-2017.
Cool.
You're welcome.
Well, from the listing, it made it seem like it was our school.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
ECO, and that's just what it's called. And let me see what else I have. There are extensive training opportunities for our principals and staff this summer. Our principals pursuing excellence, I think we have 3 or 4 principals who will be participating. And then also through New Mexico Teach, we have teachers that will also be participating in straight training. And then last minute news that was provided to me is receipt of GO bond and ETN funds. Today was the scheduled closing of the $40 million Series 2017 GO bond and $11 million Series 2017 ETN, which were sold by underwriters J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo with the support of our bond advisor, RBC. $56.8 million was wired into the district capital funds account today, with the $5.8 million premium being transferred to debt service. The closing is a tangible and actionable result of several years of hard work by the staff, the CRC, and the board, which we celebrate, and represents the confidence and trust of our community, for which we are very grateful. And then lastly, we received the second installment from the Connie sale. Yesterday, we received $1.5 $1.05 million, representing the second installment of the sale of the Connie School Building to the United Way of Santa Fe County. This cash receipt is critical to achieving our forecasted June 30th operational cash balance of $3.4 million. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Garcia. Mr. Grummer, do we have anyone signed up for public forum?
Yes, Madam President, Superintendent, members of the board, we have 2 signed up for public forum this evening. First, I'll read the public forum ground rules. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. And our speakers this evening are Mr. Larry Martinez and Miss Maya T. Del Mared, I think is Margo. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grundler. Madam President, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Garcia, I'm Larry Martinez with Presbyterian Medical Services, and we have enjoyed a long and lasting relationship with the Santa Fe Public Schools. We operate the 2 teen health centers at Santa Fe and Capitol High Schools, as well as the Healthy Tomorrows van, and we provide other services to the school, including a same-day suicide intervention, as well as behavioral health therapy in many of the schools throughout the district. But I wanted to take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude and thanks for the support that has been shown by the Santa Fe Public Schools in the implementation of a new access point grant that we received from the Health Resources and Services Administration. Despite the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty regarding what's going to happen in the healthcare system with all the discussions that are taking place both at the federal and state levels, we feel that there's a need for expanding access to care. And we did receive a grant in late December of 2016, and we were given permission to use that great resource that we've had for many, many years, which is the Healthy Tomorrows van, to provide health care at the Santa Fe Family Wellness Center, which is located at Camino Entrada, as well as in housing projects here in the community, public housing projects. And we're in the process of working out those agreements. I'm accompanied today by Ruth Center, who is the administrator for Presbyterian Medical Services for school-based health services, as well as the Ortiz Mountain Health Center in Cerrillos. But as a small token of our appreciation, I've brought a plaque, and I'd like to read the plaque, which is presented to the Santa Fe Public Schools in appreciation for commitment to the improved health of students and their families and support of Presbyterian Medical Services health care. I think this Board of Education and your administration and the many wonderful people that I get to work with on a daily basis have demonstrated a real understanding of how important it is that our students are healthy students before they can properly learn and progress as they should in the classroom. So thank you very much on behalf of Presbyterian Medical Services, and I will just leave this plaque here with Mr. Grundler, if that's all right. Thank you.
We can check and see if we can take just another photo if they want.
We're checking to see if our photographer is still here, and if she is, we'd like to have a picture together.
Or if not, someone can take a...
Maybe someone can take a picture with their cell phone.
Yeah, can you take Julie or somebody?
Good evening, Superintendent Garcia and members of the Board of Education. My name is Maya Del Margo, and my two sons attend Nava Elementary. And I am also here this evening to thank you, to say thank you to all of you. The process of attending the meetings and learning what you do has filled me with gratitude. I am very, very grateful for your service to our community and to our students. So I wanted to say a personal thank you tonight. I also wanted to deliver some thank you notes from the students of Nava. And so I'm wondering what the best procedure for that could be. Shall I walk them up to you, hand them over? What's the best step? Okay. So, thank you very much for everything that you do. Budget work, school work, all the work. Thank you.
We move on to Union Day update.
Good evening, Madam President, Board, Superintendent, Cabinet. My name is Randy Mondragon. I am the Vice President of NEA Santa Fe. I'm also on the Board of Directors for NEA New Mexico. Grace asked me to come in this evening, sort of give her a break, so you get me. I do drive a school bus. I'm an activity driver, and I enjoy it. A couple of things, let's see, she asked to talk about bargaining. Bargaining is proceeding well. We have another meeting on Thursday. I think it's going great. Thank you for understanding transportation and our concerns. Also want to thank Grace for the hard work that she's doing. A lot of people don't realize, you know, all the stuff and time that she takes out of her own personal life. So when she asked me to do this, I said, no problem, because I know she needs a break. She's doing a great job for us as president. This year I started, usually I'm doing union stuff during the summer and I usually don't work. My personal situation made me work this year. But I'm doing the Lunchbox program, Lunchbox Express, and it's really opened my eyes to our community and the concerns that we should all have as members of our community, not just in education, but in the whole, as they say, it takes a whole village. And I'm really seeing that with working with the food depot and the kids that we get to feed every day. I guess they say if you don't walk in those footsteps, you never see what's really out there or how hard it is on some of these. So it's really humbled me to see this. This is my second day doing this. And as the Vice President of NEA Santa Fe, we had our board meeting last night, and listening to the lady that's in charge there and some of the situations and concerns that these people have on feeding these young children. I think like Mr. Martinez said, you know, they need this to be healthy. They need this to have a good education. And I think that's what we're all here for. So NEA Santa Fe, we're gonna donate $500 to the Food Depot for this program to help them out wherever they need it. I offered some coloring books and things if they want those. We told them we'd get those for them and stuff, so that's something we'll talk about. But I'll be giving this over tomorrow as I go help feed the rest of the kids. Other than that, I think that's all we have right now. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for that contribution. Means a lot to me, too. Okay, we're moving on to consent. And I need some help how to do this officially. She wanted to pull something. Just pull it. What did you want to pull it to be discussed separately and voted on separately? Or you wanted to, what was your intent?
My intent is just to ask a question about one of the contracts over $50,000.
Okay. So which one are you pulling? Yes.
Madam President, just point of clarification. If she just wants to
Discuss it.
ask a question about one and not vote separately, then it's not
Then we could just-
necessary to pull it.
Okay, so we can just go ahead
And just-
and I can get a motion here?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And I think this is a roll call.
Well, no, she wants to ask the question first.
Oh, she wants to ask the question first. Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is about the contract with Davenport Construction Management for Atalaya Elementary. I'm on, I don't really know, page one of four on the contract grid.
Oh, okay.
And it's the it's the second from the bottom.
Second from the bottom. Okay.
And it says Atalaya Elementary provide with materials, there's an apostrophe, and installation of a new basketball court, walk past shade structures, regrading at Area B at existing playground, and reduction of existing sidewalk near basketball court area. Refer to attached project proposal for additional details, which I did read. And my question is really one about process. I'd just love for somebody to talk about how this project was selected and has ended up here. And has it been vetted and approved by the CRC before it comes before the board?
So, Madam President, either our CFO or our COO can answer that, but please go to the podium.
Madam President, Superintendent, Secretary Noble, this project is a result of special capital outlay. Special capital outlay does not go through the CRC. Sometimes CRC members might mention something which ends up on there, but it is not a CRC-related project. So the special capital outlay projects are a way to extend the use of our mill levy and our GeoBond funds in areas where we feel there's a real need, a real capital need around the district. And so Shonda Wagner's and her staff, typically put the initial list together. It grows through collaborative discussion. We also work with our lobbyist on, which way the wind is blowing on what might be approved by our legislative delegation and by the governor, and we submit projects based on that. And we've been successful in all years except for this last one where there wasn't an allocation in approximately $500,000 of awards for a variety of projects around the district. So this is one of those. There was another which was water catchment at Atalaya a couple years back. So this was a project which was work that remained to be done after Atalaya School was built, and the budget was extremely tight. And this looked like a good source to be able to provide some financial support to complete this work.
In addition, though, capital outlay is not, special capital outlay allocations may not always be tied to something to extend work. A legislature may decide, he may talk to a community like El Dorado and decide that they need whiteboards. And so then that appropriation will be made. We then have to follow up and get the paperwork done by a specific point in time. And that's outside of the CRC process when there are special legislative appropriations.
Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you, Madam President. And it's also tied specifically to a project. So it's not just open money that comes into the district. It would be a project specific that a legislator would say, this is what you have to do, and DFA will not release it unless that's what you do.
Right. Exactly.
Is there, is there a process by which projects which go to the legislature are selected and approved? It sounds like it's sort of organic depending on the legislative thing each year. I guess I'm just trying to, how does the school district decide what projects to put forward?
We don't always get to decide. That sometimes it's, Madam President, sometimes it's legislator driven. Now, we can talk to a legislator and say, we really need funding for X. Would you consider this as a capital, how you might want to spend your capital outlay. There have been times, and I'm not speaking for the Santa Fe Public Schools, but just in my experience, where a legislator might want a specific thing that maybe the school district does not think that they want. And so, hopefully you can talk through that and work through that. But sometimes, some school districts just don't act on it. And if you don't act on it, then the money reverts. And of course, your legislator will not be happy about that. And so we really try to work out these details to come up with a good compromise about what you want, but for the most part, it's legislator-driven.
And does the schools have an issue that has come up a number of times at the City of Santa Fe where nonprofits make the schools a fiscal agent for legislative appropriations to come through?
Not really. Well, yes, we did have one, right, with the United Way of Santa Fe County.
But it's not a regular issue where you suddenly find out that a dozen nonprofits have put in for legislative capital outlay with the schools as fiscal agents.
Madam President, Secretary Noble, no.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Carrillo?
An example would be the water catchment that Mr. Grunler spoke of. We went to our legislative delegation, or the ones that are in that area, and they really pushed hard for the water catchment at Atalaya. So for instance, for Gonzales or Aspen or any of those schools that are within your district, if there's something pressing that you think deserves attention of capital outlay, I would just get some of the northern delegation on board.
Yep. No, and I was just wondering if there's an organized process for that.
Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you. Thank you, Board President. And another example would be El Dorado, where the community went to the legislator
Yes.
and said, we want this.
Yes.
The legislator went out and got it. And I do have to just say thank you to Carl and to Christy and to Veronica and anybody else, Superintendent, anybody else who has been helpful in getting this moving, because there has been a time when we were not really sure about what money we had floating out there. And because budgets, capital outlay became so kind of constricted and tight, and we were in jeopardy of losing money and maybe even did lose some money, this team of folks has made it a priority to determine what's out there, what needs to be done, let's get it done, and let's bill for it. So they've done a really good job of doing that. But it can come organically from the community to the legislator, but in many cases it will be driven by the legislator who's hearing specifically from their community members and then works on making that happen.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call. Board Member Carrillo?
Yes.
Board Member Trujillo? Secretary?
Yes.
Vice President?
Yes.
And the President votes yes.
Thank you.
And we move on to board update and follow-up.
That's you guys.
Okay, I thought that was covered by announcements.
So we have the board announcements and then board
Yeah.
update and follow-up.
Yeah,
Is there any?
there's, yeah. Are there any board updates or follow-ups? 'Cause that's been my experience in the last number of meetings. Okay. All right, so then we move to the superintendent's update and follow-up.
Yes, we did have a question that I just wanted to follow up so the public knows we did follow up on it, and that was what we pay for the New Mexico School Boards Association and the National School Boards Association fees. So the annual fees for the New Mexico School Boards Association is $7,249.72. And for the national organization, the annual fees are $5,335. And we just finished, the New Mexico School Boards Association just finished their 38th annual law conference. I was able to attend the first day. Found it informative. There was a presentation that was given on the powers and duties of the board. The packet was not available in the in the compendium, but we did download it, and I'm going to email it to all of you. I thought you might find that helpful and useful, or a point of discussion. Mr. Carrillo?
On the NMSBA and NSBA fees, that's based on student population? How does that work?
Board Member Carrillo, members of the board, the National School Boards Association annual fees is based on the enrollment category of 7,500 to 14,999 students.
I'm sorry.
We're in a bracket between 7,500 and 14,999.
Oh, so that's for the national, okay. 7,500 and 14,000, what about for the,
And that was not
State.
provided for me, but I can get that for you. Perhaps, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I
Board
can
Member
give-
Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. So the local dues is based upon 2008 attendance. And so the increase for NMSBA has been stuck and remains stuck. It was voted on again this year to stay at 2008 enrollment. And for Santa Fe, that has always been a winning proposition. And so not only do the dues stay as they are, but it has been maintained at the enrollment of 2008. And so there's only been 1 year that I've been active where 2 school districts actually they paid a little bit more in their dues than they would have paid if it had been based upon that current year student enrollment.
so I mean, what I'm hearing is that yes, because it's based on 2008, that we come out ahead a little bit. My concern is that out of 89 school districts, that essentially it is a very undemocratic organization, given that we and others, probably 5 other districts or so, have the bulk of the students in the state of New Mexico, but we seem to get very little, if you will, representation, or the same representation. We get the same voice as a district that may have 70 kids. I mean, a whole district with 70 kids. And I don't know, it's just what it's had me thinking about more than anything. And it had me thinking about it because of this legislative session, and just sometimes being at the convention and trying to get some of these folks with horrifically different points of view relative to even, wanting to bring handguns into schools and whatever the vote might be, that we're constantly outvoted. When in fact we have, 13,000, 500,000 kids. And, in Albuquerque, when we're taking these votes, and Gadsden and Rio Rancho, we're all voting the same way. But then you have these little bitties where everyone wants to, take their gun into a bar, or doesn't want to protect, transgender students. We seem to be just outnumbered. And that's what made me really want to look at this. And just so you know, I mean, one of the things that's rattling around in my brain is the idea of maybe even having a large district school boards association, where maybe some of our points of view, even relative to budget, and perhaps fighting a governor on a budget, are heard more. Whereas in this organization, it seems that our voice maybe isn't heard relative to the size of our district, how much lobbying we do, and some of our points of view. That's why I was just curious about this, and maybe I'll not do anything with it over the years, and perhaps I'll have some idea of how to rectify that challenge for me. Because frankly, even when it comes to, lobbying the legislature, and I know you're in the president's role, but in lobbying the legislature, even around the sufficiency lawsuit, around getting more support for that, or whether it's lobbying the legislature for having, the necessary effort made in the southern and maybe different parts of the state to really reach out to some school board members, to reach out to their representatives and senators and say, look, these are your kids too, and we're doing all the work. And quite frankly, I'm sick of it, because it's their kids too, and we're doing all the work. Or that's what it seems like. So that was my issue in terms of wanting to kind of see what we're spending and why.
Madam President and members of the board, that just wanted to mention that the sufficiency lawsuit that we've talked about quite a bit begins on Monday, this coming Monday, June 12th, in Judge Singleton's courtroom here in Santa Fe at 9 a.m.
Would you, for the public, where is Judge Singleton's courtroom? Because I know that, I mean, probably at least 300 people out there watching want to attend for the opening arguments.
I know, and I don't know where I'm going. I know that I'm supposed to be there, and I'm going to be prepped tomorrow, but can staff help me? I don't know where.
Is it the one on Guadalupe that doesn't have any parking?
Where is our
And has all those barriers?
General Counsel, Lisa Sullivan? Do you know where our, where that court case is going to be heard, where Judge Singleton's office is, or courtroom is?
Unless they got removed, I don't know how holds her hearings and her trials at the First Judicial District Courthouse at the corner of Sandoval and Montezuma.
So the corner of Sandoval and Montezuma in the First Judicial Courthouse.
Terrific.
The best parking spot would be the garage at the corner of Galisteo.
Great.
And that case starts at 9, will be heard at, begins at 9 a.m. So we imagine people would want to go early.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
And my never-ending displeasure with what goes on up here, that's not very handicap accessible. Next.
And lastly, just the legislative, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to say something, Board Member Trujillo? Oh, I thought
Yeah,
you
but I
had
have to
said
walk
something, I
all the way from
apologize.
the parking
Just a
lot
quick
to the-
legislative update, and that is that
They should have parking.
our strategy seemed to have held, that for now anyway, the legislature did not cut anything from K-12 education. And I understand that the budget that we've been given has held. Now, there may be an increase in the unit value, but we've not been told that. Probably an adjustment, if it does happen, would happen before January or right around January, is my guess. So the strategy that we took to go with the budget that we had appeared to hold. And so we know that now we don't have to move forward, and we can move forward and not be concerned that we have to cut 1 or 1.5 or 2%. So just wanted to share that, and I don't know if Board Member Trujillo has anything else she wants to add about the legislative update.
Board Member Trujillo?
Thank you, Board President. So, in regards to the unit value, apparently, the other legislators didn't understand that PED was doing adjustments in January. So, in most cases, the budget, they adjust it up, right? And what's been happening over the years is that they adjust it up, they give us more money, but we've already budgeted. It's really difficult to kind of move that into the classroom in such a short fashion. And so the legislature discovered this session for some reason. I'm not sure how that came about, and put it into the budget language that the unit value had to be updated and made whole before January, and the governor vetoed that language. And so the update of the unit value will not be until the regular time that it's happening. So there was an attempt to try to stop this wait and see cat and mouse game that we tend to play with the budget, and make PED do a unit value rather than trying to save some money to give to schools at a later date.
I know the unit value can, by statute, can be adjusted, has one adjustment. And typically, just kind of see how the units fall out, if there's any emergencies, et cetera. But for now, we know what the unit value is, and we move forward with that. The other piece just that is related to the legislature is that the Santa Fe Public Schools was asked to present Ms. Raper and I will be presenting on behalf of the district with select districts regarding K-3 plus funding. And the reason that we're being asked to present is that our understanding was there was not a cut to K-3 plus funding in the current year, and yet we were cut 15%. Albuquerque Public Schools was cut 50%, and other school districts were increased. And we also asked for flexibility, as we were told to, or to ask for additional funding. We submitted that. We were told we were going to be given an answer right away, and we have consequently submitted 2 different requests for clarification if we could have flexibility in our Title I funding and where the kids go to school, if we could have flexibility on that. They have yet to respond. Today, I actually made a phone call to Deputy Secretary Paul Aguilar. I doubt that I will hear back, but we will just present the facts. And I believe that's the 18th, the 16th, where we'll be presenting to the Legislative Education Study Committee, and I think we're first on at 9 a.m. And that concludes my legislative update.
First Secretary Noble, and then Board Member Trujillo.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wondering if there's any update on putting out information to parents on the K-3 plus program.
So I've been working with Staff Secretary and President Noble, waiting to hear from PED, but we are going to move forward with the plan that we do have. And we hope to have parents notified before the end of the week as to who could go. It's late, but we've been waiting. We didn't want to put out partial information. Just also want to share just a little challenge for anybody that's listening or that would like to participate. We really appreciate the support of the Santa Fe Community Foundation. They allocated $20,000 with an additional challenge to raise $20,000 from the community to give us $40,000 for summer school. And they're very committed to that. We have $7,000 to go. So today on the radio station, I wrote a check for $100. It's a superintendent challenge. We need 69 people to give $100, and we'll have our $1,000. So we hope people will take the challenge.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, I didn't call you, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I have it written down.
Thank you, Board President. So yesterday, we got our committee appointments, and I am happy to say that I will be a member of the New Mexico Finance Authority Oversight Committee. I'm very excited
Sounds
about
good.
that. And a member, this is exciting to me, it may not seem exciting to everyone else, but the Science, Technology, and Telecommunications Committee. But I do have a great interest in broadband and how we move that forward in our communities. So I'm kind of excited, I'm pretty excited about that one. And in an advisory capacity for the LESC, which is the Education Study Committee and the Economic and Rural Development Committee. So I will also be at that LESC meeting for those 3 days.
Thank you. Moving on to presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. We had questions, and I brought questions about, I think the board had questions and I had concerns about our online credit recovery program. And so this evening, Dr. Tom Ryan and Ms. Linda Sink will be making a presentation to you along with some recommendations for improvement. And with that, Dr. Ryan, are you going to kick it off?
Yes, I'll be kicking it off. We broke this down into more of a research problem for us, so our problem statement is...
I don't believe your microphone is on.
It is, I'm too far away from it. The problem statement that we're addressing is there a sufficient accountability and rigor in our online credit recovery program within Santa Fe Public Schools. What I heard from the board and in the community, there's a lot of confusion about the definitions that we're going to use, so we're going to set some definitions that we can use to make sure we're talking about the same things. First, we're going to define face-to-face learning as kind of the brick and mortar traditional educational program that we've had before, and the opposite end of that is going to be our distance or online learning component, where instruction isn't delivered in a face-to-face, but the teacher and the student are separated by space and time. You still have a highly qualified teacher in the content area, but they don't necessarily report to the campus. We don't have full distance learning programs within the Santa Fe Public Schools, although students could transfer credit in from, say, a BYU online kind of a program where they're getting a transfer credit that's separate and outside of Santa Fe School District. Blended learning is attempt to take the best of the online content that's being used for instruction and the face-to-face component for the support that that child gets. And that becomes a blended learning program. This is becoming very popular in all classrooms as we bring in these online resources, and certainly with our digital learning plan, we have that option as we've built out. I do want to state that this is not the same as technology-rich instruction. Putting computers and interactive whiteboards and other technologies in the classroom does not make it blended. There's a distinction. It would have to be the delivery of instructional resources through an online environment to make that coordinated. In Santa Fe Public Schools, we use two basic versions of the online, our blended models, and we're calling them, and we made these up just so that we could distinguish between the two, blended classrooms that have the primary focus of the student reporting to school every day, but getting online resources delivered to them. We're calling blended classroom courses. Courses where the student might be taking most of the course online and showing up to take a test and getting some extra support. Maybe they're taking some ideal classes or whatever. We're calling those blended online. So the only difference, it's a blended program where most of the content is instruction is being delivered online, and then, or most of the content being delivered in the face-to-face classroom using online resources, all right? We'll talk about the different programs that we have in the school district. The second thing that's important, because this was a confusing point across the country, is the difference between original credit and credit recovery. There are two different types of programs. Credit recovery, original credit, is when the student is going to take the entire course from beginning to end, and they're going to be receiving that. It could be done in online, it could be done in blended, or it can be done face-to-face. But they're taking the entire course to get the original credit. So if a student fails in 9th grade and then takes the same class over in 10th grade, that's still original credit because they're taking the whole course over. This has, Linda, was
Excuse
that?
me, question?
Yes, ma'am.
So if they have not received the credit in the 9th grade and they take it in the 10th grade, will the grades sit on their transcript from 9th grade, or will there be only one grade from 9th and 10th grade?
Both grades will be on the transcript. The grade, the higher of the two grades, will be figured into their cumulative average.
Thank you.
The important part about this is they're going to get, it's a seat time based kind of a model. They're going from start to finish. We're not skipping over certain content because they've already mastered it, all right? The second model is credit recovery. In a credit recovery model, we're assuming that the student has learned some content from a class they previously failed. I took Algebra 9, I went through the school year, I didn't get enough credit to pass. I did pick up some things, I just didn't pick them up at all of the things, and we're going to come in and assess to find out what have you already mastered, and then what gaps do we need to fill in. So it's less than a full course of study. All right, so that's a distinction that we're making between original credit and credit recovery options.
Question? Does that take into consideration attendance?
Superintendent, Board President Price, I'm not sure what your question means.
If the person didn't pass the course because they missed the content or had trouble with the course, but they were there, That's different than if somebody just decided not to go to school.
But there's a difference, and I think this is where, go back to the previous slide, and I've had this misconception as well on credit recovery. You have already taken some of that class. It's not like you didn't go to class at all and you missed the class. That would not be credit recovery. That would be taking the course over again. And what I always thought credit recovery was, I may have failed, or I got, part of the class, and I'm taking the whole class again. We're going to give you an opportunity to recover the credit. Credit recovery here, they're taking part of the coursework. They're not taking the whole class over again. Go ahead.
So Linda's going to review some of the programs that we
This is
have and some of the
confusing.
findings that we received in our report.
President Price, members of the board. Some of the current online programs in Santa Fe Public Schools include, and I'm sure you're well aware of this part of it, Academy at Laragoite. You can see the number of students engage. And then Santa Fe High School. We'll talk a little bit about Capitol High School and Bridge. All of these schools basically have a blended classroom in that they are face-to-face and online. I would say I went and actually visited these schools and saw at Academy, for instance, that the kids were in a particular classroom with computers, but they would move to another classroom and have face-to-face time. They would do some more, if you will, deeper level learning, discussions, and having a better understanding of what they were doing on the computer. At Gage, I only saw students on the computer. In the credit recovery program, again, I didn't see teachers interacting with the students. It was solely the online version of it. Same with Capitol and with Bridge. I didn't see Zia kids on at least when I visited, ever on the computer. It doesn't mean that they never are. But these are the main programs that I visited. The program findings in the district, and I think it goes to much of what you had noted in the first place and why you wanted us to see this, so this probably doesn't come to a surprise to you. We did not see district-wide program strategies, a standard or a coordinator. No program standards, definitions, or requirements. No eligibility requirements for students, kind of similar to what Dr. Garcia talked about just a moment ago. No number of course maximum for students, percent of courses passed, no pre-assessment required, no grade level cutoff. There may not have been, in several instances, a teacher licensed in the content area. So they may have had, for instance, 60 kids in an area, let's say the cafeteria or something, and there may be one teacher there, but there's different content areas going on in the cafeteria. So that doesn't mean there's a teacher there licensed in math if a student's on a math curriculum on the computer. No course completion requirements. So one day we spent basically Mr. Wade, myself, and Dr. Ryan, I think Neil also was involved, spent the day with Edgenuity folks, and we looked at data the whole day, and looked at some people were on a particular course for 2 years or 3 years. So we're going to have recommendations for you on that. We didn't have identification of courses eligible for credit recovery. And not every school has someone responsible for maintaining accurate course enrollments. Currently, some students active in courses started 900 days ago. I alluded to that already. No consistent pre-test to identify gaps in educational programming. Inconsistent monitoring of student progress. Some teachers lack enough training. Some teachers lack licensure in the content area, which we said before. No required face-to-face end-of-course exam. Some students are receiving credit for courses with only a few hours of activity in the course. So.
What we need to clarify, though, on that second to the last bullet, which I believe what you meant, is that it is required to have an EOC, an end-of-course exam, by state, right? And so it meant that it's not happening, because you could interpret that as that there was no required EOC, but rather it's not happening. Just to clarify that point, sorry.
There were also some program findings in the technology area. What we try to do is go in like an audit process and look at what was happening and then come back.
Board
I'm
Member
sorry,
Carrillo.
previous slide, because I want to make sure that I heard correctly.
Yeah, that's also, I think you skipped a slide.
So, no required face-to-face end of course. Yes, it's required, we're supposed to do it. So what I just heard you say is, it's required, but it may not be happening. And if it may not be happening, how are these kids getting credit for the course? Or are they being given credit without the EOC?
That's probably what happened.
Well, that's disturbing. Okay, we'll go on, yeah.
As far as technology, some of the students are taking these programs that have a lot of online focus, but they don't have mobile access, maybe outside the school, where they could help do some of the work outside of like homework, et cetera.
Excuse me, could you go back one slide, please? So the bottom one, some students are receiving credit for courses with only a few hours of activity in the course. So it's possible, it has been possible to take physics, take 3 hours and pass physics?
Board President Price, that could have happened. We just noticed that there was no standard for the amount of time, and that doesn't mean that they didn't pre-assess and say they were almost there and they just need to do a few more things to get done.
Okay.
We didn't go to that depth.
I got it, thank you.
I'm sorry. So on that same last one, because I think in my board review, we talked about this, and maybe it's coming later in your presentation, where there were some really big red flags where someone may have not taken the course at all, spending only a few hours on the course, and then one has to wonder whether how they downloaded the test, what enabled them to do in a few hours what it took other people at least 12 hours to do, or 20 hours.
There was some anecdotal stuff that came to my attention to that degree. Whether or not you actually validated that, we don't know. But there has been anecdotal and some credible anecdotal data of parents whose children maybe took a course like physics and finished it in 17 hours, 15 hours. And maybe he was an exceptional child, I don't know. But if you recall, I brought this to your attention that we were going to be studying this along with, I'm happy that we have higher graduation rates, but I want to make sure that our students are prepared when they graduate. So when we take a look at this and we look at the recommendations and you tighten up on some of this, I hope the quality goes up. One consequence of that might be a decreased graduation rate till we kind of get back on track. But and you won't see that till the following year. But this was my concern, that in our zeal to ensure that children did graduate, some of the quality control fell off. And this is what we're trying to do, is to improve the quality of the program, because the students deserve that.
Vice President Cashman?
I just want us to be careful, though, too. I do know of some students that took E2020, and they took it as not for credit recovery, but as an online course because the course was not offered. And I do know that some students did finish it in a shorter period of time, but I also know they were doing a lot of work because they were getting ready to play spring sports or whatever, and so they knew they needed to get that done beforehand. So, so we just you know, we need
Staying
to be
legitimate.
careful that
We
we're
don't
not
know.
thinking, yeah, and so.
We don't know, not everyone, but it is clear that there are things that we can do to make things better. We'll get to the recommendations in a little bit, but let's go ahead and finish the program findings and what we found on the technology side.
So as I started, we have some students that could benefit from not only having a mobile device, but also having internet from home so that they can continue to do the work outside of the program. The network upgrades that we've experienced through the educational technology notes have really created an environment where we can offer these at all of our schools without having delays in the amount of time it takes to download or access the software that the students are using. We did notice that there's multiple software programs that kind of do the same thing, so we might be paying extra maintenance or have extra support that we got to provide around two sets of tools that may be consolidating to one, so we'll move into that in our recommendations. We believe, this administration believes that credit recovery can be a viable option to meet the graduation requirements that we have for students, but there needs to be some discipline and standard from the district enforced within the programs that our schools are offering.
And I want to clarify that. Can you go back to that slide? I had asked for juniors and seniors to be taken off.
I thought I took it
because we
off.
do want it available for all of our students to have that option for credit recovery. So that was an error on that slide. It should be for all students.
Yes, this is probably an earlier version of the one that we have. We're requiring a pretest to determine what content the student has mastered. So the student would go in, they can take a unit test. We can identify if they've mastered that. If they haven't mastered it, they'd have to take those instructional time to master it and then taking a test to make sure they've mastered it. If they have mastered it, we move on to the next unit to find out where are the gaps. We have that availability in the software, we just haven't taken advantage of it in that way. We want to we want to make sure that the students have the right resources at home and in the program to be successful. We are recommending that we try to keep it to 2 credit recoveries on top of a full on top of a full load. There's going to be some that come in some of our programs where they've been suspended, or there's some other issues where they can take more. So we're looking at how do we assure success, and there's a way for students also to get special permission if their situation demands more. Students must successfully complete a minimum of 75% of the course to receive credit for the course. You're not going to be able to take 60% of the course and have an A in it, but you really haven't finished the content. So we want to make sure there's some standards around what's considered a completion for the course, and that the credits come from the teacher of record, not from the software program. So this is the E20. It's the software that we use is not an accredited instructional program. It's just software. It's like a textbook. So the grade doesn't come from the recommendation that the software makes. It comes from the teacher of record, which is why if it's a math class, it has to be a math teacher that's making the recommendation.
Again, this is for credit recovery.
This
We're
is credit
not
recovery.
talking about original credit like an E2020 online course. This is a credit recovery class that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. An online course would have a teacher of record.
Or an original
teacher
credit,
would
that's
be teaching it.
different.
Right.
Yeah.
First, Vice President Cashman, and then Board Member Carrillo.
Why would the students, or why are you recommending to us that they have to complete a minimum of 75% of the course? They're going to get a full credit. We don't give 3/4 of a credit. So why aren't they being required to complete the whole course just like a regular student sitting in a classroom would?
Board President Price and Vice President Cashman, a student could technically have an A in 75% of all the course content and average the last part and still be able to pass a course. I mean, it doesn't have to, that they have an A through the whole thing.
It's for the credit recovery portion. That's why I'm saying, keep clear that this is not the original class. So if they, on credit recovery, were lacking a quarter of the course, they would need 75% of that to get the credit. They wouldn't need the full course because they may have already earned some of, partial credit or, part of the course in the regular classroom.
So then how does that show on the transcript? I mean, I understand, sure, if you have 75% of your grade is an A, and then you say, I'm going to get a 0, what is that grade on the transcript? It better not be an A.
Board President Price and Vice President Cashman, that is exactly right. You wouldn't be getting an A. You'd be getting whatever the average is. What we were the intent of this was that a student wouldn't take 50% of a course and get an A in that 50% and then get the A or a high grade on their transcript. So this was doing just the opposite of what you said. They have to make sure that they have mastery through a course and that we've captured their previous knowledge and the new mastery that they've taken in the online course, and that there's a minimum amount of that course. They're not going to walk in and take it in an hour. You would have to go and test out of several different units before you could get to a grade that we're going to give, and this is setting a standard that says you're not going to be able to do this in an hour.
Board Member Carrillo?
Same issue. By the way, asynchronously, I think, is word of the week for you guys on this slide. And I think I understand what you're saying, but it's just so long as they're, by the time they do the recovery portion of their work, they'll have taken the whole course. That's what I heard you say?
I want to make sure I follow the protocols here. Board President Price and Board Member Carrillo. The intent here is that the student is taking the whole course, and we're trying to put some standards in to assure that we have some evidence, both in the tests and the things they've already mastered and the new content before they can establish a grade. We do have situations where kids just want to get to the D so they can graduate and be done, and so they stop participating as much. And so again, this was an intent to make sure that we're confident that they've met the rigor to receive a credit in this course, as opposed to just getting a course for showing up a few times.
And I imagine this is not just happening here, but it's happening all over the country. Let's just, I mean, we just keep lowering that bar, right? Don't we? I mean, to just say, to really be able to enable. And that's what it is. We're enabling a student to just get that D. That's pathetic. And I'm not a judgment on anybody in the school system or anything. It's just culture. Parents, it's pathetic.
I've recommended since the 1980s that the grade D be removed, that at A, B, C, or F. We tried it as a pilot I believe it was one semester at Santa Fe High, and it didn't work for a lot of reasons, most of them political.
Should I continue with to the point that was already made, there's some confusion in the state that as long as there's a certified teacher in the class, they can go into the program, and it could be an English teacher and a math student, and they can get credit. And that is a misunderstanding, and it's a confusion between online distance programs and face-to-face or credit recovery programs. So we want to assure and guarantee that all of the credits come from a teacher of record that is qualified in the endorsement of the subject that the student would be receiving the credit from. We believe there needs to be a district coordinator that will supervise the various programs to make sure there's some consistency with the use of this tool as a way for students to achieve credit, that there'd be a specific site coordinator at each school. Now, we don't think that there's students in the program that are taking a class for 900 days. The student was enrolled and never, no one ever never stated that that student was done. So there's records that make looking at the data difficult, right? So we want to make sure there's a site coordinator at every school to make sure that at the end of the semester, all of those students are either receiving a grade for it and they don't go on in forever without having, and really not be taking the course materials. And that if a student doesn't complete the course in a semester, there's a opportunity for them to get an extension. We do the same thing if some major illness or something happens before a face-to-face student finishes a course. We provide them an opportunity to finish it up when they can get back to school or back out of the hospital, kind of a day.
Vice President Cashman?
On the previous slide, I just want to make sure, if you're taking a math course and you're going to have to get a math teacher to certify that you completed that course, are we allowing our teachers to say, I'm not, because I know at the high school level, there's a lot of professional opinions on whether taking credit recovery you should get the same grades than the kids that are showing up in the classroom day after day. And so I don't want to see our kids go through a class and then the math teacher saying, I don't consider it adequate. So is there any flexibility, or as long as our kids pass whatever is on the computer, that teacher is going to certify that?
Board President Price and Vice President Cashman, the intent of this is that it's a teacher that provides the grade, not the software. And the software can calculate certain things, but the teacher has to establish whether the student has mastered enough of that content to receive credit for that subject. And that's what we're enforcing with this policy.
But I would imagine on that point that if a student was already enrolled in that teacher's class and they are doing credit recovery, by de facto, the teacher has already agreed to that process. It's not like we're going to spring a kid onto a teacher that didn't know that this kid was doing credit recovery. So they would have to be enrolled under a teacher for that course. Does that make sense?
No, maybe I'm misstating. You know, the reality is there are conflicts between students and teachers. And so you might have gone and taken a course with this one teacher, and for whatever reason, you haven't meshed. And so now you have to do the credit recovery, and, you know, that might be, you know, like, let me say, a calculus teacher. Well, you know, you're not going to be able to recover because you have one calculus teacher. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand, you know, and take the human factor out of it as much as possible for these kids that are in credit recovery. Have gone back to master the content, but they know they can't get that credit from that particular teacher.
Let me ask you, in terms of qualification, in terms of clearing this up, I have a question. I think I hear you say it doesn't have to be a calculus teacher, it has to be a teacher endorsed in math. Is that correct?
Board President Price, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then I just wanted to follow up and say that if you get a D in Algebra 1, no way are you qualified to take Algebra 2.
And Board
I
President,
think that's a
that would
setup.
be-
I think that's a setup for failure.
That would be true in a face-to-face class, an online class, or a credit recovery class.
Okay, thank you.
The teacher of, going back to the teacher of record, you need, and which is another recommendation, that teachers are trained in the delivery of content in a online vehicle in a face-to-face class. It wouldn't be, I failed a course with a teacher and then I have an option to take it online with that same teacher. There'd be a whole different program that I'd be taking that course with.
Vice President Cashman?
But I want to go back to a point that President Price made if you get a D in Algebra 1, you're not qualified to move into Algebra 2. That's not what our policy is right now. So if that's our intent, then we're back to where Board Member Carrillo said Ds don't count. I mean, you know, these kids have to move on. So I think we have a disconnect. I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't like Ds either, but that's not our board policy. A D is passing. You're setting them up for failure in Algebra 2, I agree, but some kids are going to go and get tutoring over the summer or whatever, and I think that's where we get, especially our math courses. So.
Vice President Cashman, this is a little bit different than what we're talking about in credit recovery, but I will tell you that we agree with you that a D is not mastering a course well enough to be successful, in, for instance, in an Algebra 2. So Santa Fe Public Schools offers another course in between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 for those students that definitely need to have more help before they try Algebra 2, and it's, I think, called Applied Math. So that's where they're trying to get practice, if you will, and a better understanding of those concepts before they move into Algebra 2.
Vice President Cashman.
I want, you know, and since I love math, I want our kids to be highly proficient in math. However, applied math, then, and maybe we've talked about this, but I don't think so. I will tell you, applied math for any of our athletes will not count if they are trying to go through the NCAA process. That is not a sanctioned course. We may think it's a sanctioned course, and if we're not telling these kids that we have set them up for failure when they think they're getting, you know, I mean, and moving on to college. So I think we need to maybe look at this a little bit and, you know, come back with a little bit firmer recommendation. So students, parents, and teachers and the board are all on the same page, and I don't have my phone ringing off the hook because a kid now can't be considered for an athletic scholarship or play athletics at the college level. Applied math doesn't count.
Let me clarify something. And we've talked about the courses being on the website and starred for those that are NCAA accepted. Remember, we had that conversation before, and we need to ensure that that is being updated on our website. That's one. Two, tonight is a presentation to have a conversation. There are no recommendations being brought for action tonight. This is more of a conversation to go back and look. I think this is going to require some in-depth discussion because there are unintended consequences of just saying, okay, well, we're not going to count a D, you know. And so, you know, I think there's just a lot to do with this. This was a result of, you know, conversations that you brought up, that I brought up, that we asked the staff to study, to look at some initial recommendations. We've had our discussions, because we're not all on the same page philosophically about what we believe about this. So it's interesting to hear your perspectives. You know, we need to talk to teachers. We need to talk to parents. We need to talk to principals. And again, look at the literature. Look at best practices. We will, in the near future, bring a set of recommendations to you about this. So keep in mind that there'll be some other bites at the apple. But, you know, hearing your comments is helpful to us.
Our last, I believe it's our, one of our, whoops, I'm sorry. You made that one too.
Excuse me, I think you skipped a slide. Only reason why I noticed
No.
that is, no? Okay, then I have a question, and I would like to ask Board Member Trujillo. My understanding is the state legislature has mandated in order to graduate, you have to have Algebra 1 and you have to have Algebra 2. And that there has been conversation in the state legislature that not all kids.
I don't believe it's Algebra 2.
It's
I think
not?
I can go back and check, but I'm pretty sure it's Algebra 1 only.
I don't think so.
Algebra 2?
Yes, I believe it's also Algebra 2. And so my understanding is there's been discussion in the legislature about changing that second course, possibly from Algebra 2 to a different math course. Is that correct?
Board President, there was conversation in the 60-day session to allow Algebra 2 to be replaced, not replaced, to be an addition. It was very odd, but it didn't pass. It didn't make it out of the Education Committee. And the reason being is that in the end, there were enough legislators that felt that Algebra 2 was important, and that while computer science is an important class that could be taken, that it would not be wise to substitute that for Algebra 2. That was the discussion, and it didn't go very
Thank you,
far
Iris.
at all.
That's the reason why I asked to go back to this, because it was the core content courses. Board Member Creel? Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted to finish? Oh, you had your hand up before he did, yeah.
Board President, I just have a question. So I recognize that these are credit recovery recommendations, and I see that we'll do some sort of a cleaning house at the end of 90 days. I hope we're going to have some sort of a notice to students. I saw the extreme is that there's 900 hours or 900 days ago, and so those students are probably not there anymore, but some sort of a notice to students that, and or parents, depending upon their age, because if they're over 18, or if they're 18 or over, it's going to have to be to them, that this information is in fact going to be wiped clean. So I hope that we'll have some sort of a 30-day, 90-day notification so that students have the ability to come in and say, wait,
So that's it. That's good input. As I said, we're not making any recommendations tonight. We're having a conversation. The 90-day limit was a semester. And so it felt that within a semester's time, you should finish it. But I think on many of these pieces, there need to be some exceptions, because there are things that come up that maybe someone's very close to finishing a course, and why wouldn't you give them 100 days?
Right.
So, you know, I do think that there is some conversation that we still have to have at the staff level. And then again, your feedback is helpful.
Board Member Creel?
To Dr. Garcia or to Mr. Ryan, is it usual that state legislatures meddle this much in what courses kids should take?
Graduation requirements, actually, we took, I hate to say that, but Algebra 2 was actually ours. And because it's a gateway now, Algebra 1 used to be a gateway. But it is set by statute.
But is that typical in other states?
Yeah, it's not
I'm
uncommon.
just curious.
Yeah.
All right. And the second thing is, you've said on a number of occasions, we're not making any recommendations, but every one of these pages says recommended on it.
Well, this is a presentation.
No, I understand
and these are
that, but it's
staff
just, well,
recommendations.
these are being kind of put forth as, this is what we would suggest.
To some degree, that's why I clarified it.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
clarification. It does say credit recovery recommendations at the staff level. We're still having discussions. So, you know, they're recommendations for consideration. We're getting your input on that. This is not an action item.
This slide deals with credit recovery teachers. We want to make sure that all the teachers that are teaching these classes are qualified with the endorsement in the content area, that their responsibilities are spelled out, monitoring enrollment, attendance, student progress through the course materials, and intervening at those times where the student may be struggling, that there's a series of support for students to make sure that they have the wraparound support necessary to be successful, that all of the pre-tests and PARC and end of course exams are proctored to make sure that those tests are being taken by the students who are going to be earning the credit for those exams, that the final grade is a determination by the teacher looking at what content has been mastered and the performance in the course, and that the teachers have received appropriate professional development, not only with the system, the software that they're going to be using, but with instructional strategies that are going to support at-risk students, because these are kids that have already failed the traditional model in the past. And the district should, and as far as future opportunities, these are not things that we're saying are going to happen, but once we get the credit recovery component shored up, there are some opportunities for other online and blended learning. So advancement, middle school students taking courses, having different models or different, so to the point about I'm not doing well in this class, you're not taking it over again in an online format, but in a different modality with different supports that are wrapped around the students. The ability to consolidate some of the online programs so we have one system that we're supporting instead of paying maintenance on multiple systems that may be doing the same thing. And as we're already starting to do, several of these different modalities of delivering instruction could be housed under one school with different programs depending on the at-riskness of the child, whether it's they're over 18 or they've been suspended or they've just had difficulties in a traditional face-to-face program. So there's some opportunities that we can take advantage of to really grow some of the resources that we're providing for kids to be successful. Currently, we're focused mainly on credit recovery, but opportunities for advancement can move forward, independent study. We're also bringing in a learning management system, which is a digital environment to house content and assignments and grades of that nature, and can provide some professional development also to our staff that we could leverage in a way to give a nice portfolio of opportunities for all the students, from advancement or AP to credit recovery. And there's also an opportunity, we lose a lot of students to Connections Academy or other fully online models that take our students, because kids have some reasons why they'd want to be taking a full online course, and we could be providing those opportunities and fight to bring those kids back into our system here in Santa Fe.
I also wanted to just clarify something on the math requirement. So it's 4 units in math, of which 1 shall be the equivalent to or higher than the level of Algebra 2, unless the parent submitted written signed permission for the student to complete a lesser mathematics unit, and provided that a financial literacy course that meets state mathematics academic content and performance standards shall qualify as one of the 4 required math units. So there is some flexibility there.
Vice President Cashman.
I hope on options for advancement for some of those online courses that we also look at not just AP, because I know there are programs to do it, but right now all of New Mexico offers for college kids dual credit, that we know those will transfer from community college to our 4-year colleges. They're prescribed, so I hope we take a look at those programs, because that helps, get our kids some college credit, whereas AP courses require an AP score, and sometimes they don't jive. And I've been impressed. One of my daughters took a online course from Colorado that was certified to be used, and I was highly impressed with the quality of that course. In fact, I think she learned more, but it was a blended course. There was interaction with a college professor, but we have that in New Mexico too, so I hope we look at that.
Well, we have many students currently who are enrolled in dual credit.
I have a question. I may be dating myself, but does anyone know if they still give CLEP exams? They do? Okay. CLEP exam is an exam you can take in your freshman year, and you can and you can get out of a number of courses if you pass it. So I'm not aging myself. Okay. And I also wanted to make note of, there are a number of colleges now that are not accepting AP credits and are talking about suspending, even taking SAT scores. So things change, but not CLEP, obviously.
So, back on the K-12 online virtual school that we want to really look into and bring to the board, possibly a recommendation next spring for the following year. And it ties also to one of the action items later on study as we look at program and facilities alignment, is what advantages we have as a school district to blend online with PE or music or art, which could be a real advantage to parents that are maybe homeschooling, or that our competitors who offer online learning have not been able to provide, that we could provide. We currently have 228 students who are in our community, who are in the state virtual school, that we would love to have back in our school district. So anyway, just looking at these options. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Now we're going to move on to action items. And
Oh, go ahead.
And the first one is the meal prices?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, I would like to ask Christy Yonda if she would present this item. As you well know, that we have mentioned this to you in terms of changes that we've received from the National School Lunch Program. We do have to ensure that there are sufficient funds to support the program. And so with that, I'll ask Ms. Yonda to go over the recommended changes and why we're looking at this.
Good evening, Board President Price, board members, superintendent. You have before you a rather routine item we brought to you over the last couple of years. Per the formula prescribed, we're not allowed to supplement our free meals with paid lunch prices, and so we're following this formula and trying to reach the weighted average of $2.86 for the paid meals. We've broken out for you, Ms. Hawkes has broken out for you the elementary and K-8 increases from $2.25 to $2.30. Middle school Milagro is the only paid middle school, that's why it's listed and broken out separate, from $2.50 to $2.60. In the high school increase from $2.50 to $2.75. Again, this is standard procedure per a formula, and it is to be in compliance with our reimbursement processes and not use paid meal funds to supplement, or not use our reimbursement to supplement paid meals. I'll stand for questions at this time. I'll just keep the information up front simple.
Any questions? Board Member Creel?
Just a motion to approve.
Second? No,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
Somebody sitting on that?
Can you guys turn off the computer on that side, please? The next item is the approval of the new auditor, and the audit committee met, and a selection was sent to the Honolulu Accounting Group. And I would like to then turn this over to our Chief Financial Officer.
Well, I'd like to say before you that Mr. Larry Maribal is not new. And I've known him for years, and I value his work and the quality of his work. Go ahead.
Yes, President Price, so do we. President Price, Superintendent, and members of the board, the cover sheet covers the process and the requirement. The requirement every 3 years, the state auditor requires a district to either renew the contract of its current auditor or select a new auditor from the audit list. So that process has been completed. It was led by Mr. Larry Mirabal, who's the vice chair of the audit committee and was the selection process lead. We've been through that recommendation and that discussion at 2 audit committee meetings, one of which Secretary Noble was in attendance, and certainly communicated with Member Trujillo, who knows this auditor well because of her experience in New Mexico school board governance, and also as a member of her local Board of Education. So certainly it has our strong recommendation as being a very good fit for the school district. Some of the biggest problems we've had, I think that Mr. Mirabal will kind of talk about those and how this auditor actually meets our expectations that have been developed from experience. So, Mr. Mirabal.
Madam President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, as Mr. Grunler stated, the audit RFP committee convened. We unanimously selected, as your page in your book over there states, the Jaramillo Accounting Group, also known as JAG. It was a unanimous decision. We all voted for them as our first top selection. Some of the things that were most important to us, and coincidentally, they were the only firm actually that complied with all the questions that we had in the RFP, and that was one of capacity. They're the only ones that actually submitted what capacity they have, and they clearly had more than enough capacity to take on our audit as well as anybody else that might select them for this coming fiscal year. Their timetables are very, very good for the district. They plan on having a draft audit submitted to us no later than October 20th, which is nearly 1 month prior to the deadline of the state auditor has to be turned into his office. They plan on having this submitted to the state auditor's office by November 1. And based on all of the references that they submitted, they are customarily 2 weeks ahead of what they even have as their expected timetable. So that was very critical in the selection. That was actually one of the highest points that could be gathered. It was the experience, the background in doing districts or governmental audits, and meeting timelines. And that's been a critical issue for the past 3 years, is getting things sprung upon us in the last week, 2 weeks if we were lucky, and consequently either barely making it on time or not making it on time at all to the OSA. So based on all of those factors, they did score the highest, like I said previous. With that, I'll stand for any other questions that you might have before I would present a formal request to approve this selection.
Are there any questions or comments? Secretary?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say thank you to you and the other members of the Audit Committee for your very detailed work on this. This looks great, and with that, I would move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Mirabal, is there anything further you would like to say?
No, just it's going to be great to work with them, and as far as I'm concerned, you have a very top-tier financial staff in this district, and believe me, I've seen them all. I used to be in charge of all of them, and I think they deserve to have a top-tier auditor, and I think that's exactly what they're going to get in this.
And Mr. Mirabal, you'll remain as my selection on the Audit Committee?
Yes, I.
Thank you very
Glad
much. Just a little bit of pressure, just a little bit. All in favor? Aye. I didn't hear anyone opposed, so it passes. I didn't ask. Is there anyone opposed who'd like to change to opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you. Calendar changes?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We were approached by the city clerk that informed us that on even years, the first Tuesday of the month is a citywide election, And we were not, when you built the calendar, this was, I guess, we had not been approached. And so they were requesting for March 1st. Mr. Grandler and staff looked at this. The recommendation is to close school on March 1st and add May 23rd as the final day of school. This will push the final 2 days of teacher planning and preparation and in-service to May 24th and 25th. So our understanding is across the country, more and more schools are closing on Election Day for school safety reasons. So we recommend approval of amending the calendar your 2-year calendar that you approved for 17-18 by closing school on March 1st and adding a day on May 23rd for the students.
Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Board Member Carrillo.
And so, relative to the CBA, if the last days of school are the 24th and 25th, does this mean that for graduations next year and in the following years, the teachers will still be under contract?
Board Member Carrillo and members of the board, they will be we will be bringing to you, I think in the fall, the next 2-year calendar. But this one, yes, they will still be on. It's my understanding.
Okay.
Any other discussion? It's been moved and it's been seconded. All in favor? Yeah, aye. All opposed? It passes.
Thank you. And the calendar is attached if you wanted to see it. The next item is the first read of a new policy, 543, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. And I will ask our Chief Financial Officer to clarify or to explain why this is being brought to you today.
Thank you, Superintendent. President Price, members of the board. You can see from the cover sheet, which is attached to the actual language of the policy, that last year it was sprung on districts statewide a requirement to have our own district policy for basically the Fiscal Grants Management Procedures Manual, which the Public Education diligently produces and trains to every year, which provides implementation and timeline guidance, and then also statutory policy, particularly on travel, that this audit finding indicates. One of the reasons we just made the decision we made is that we received a significant deficiency for not having this piece of paper approved by the board. So the actual implementation will not change, and it shouldn't. I mean, we're taking significant guidance on implementation from the Public Education Department that has whole staffs to be able to monitor these changes to be in compliance with the uniform guidance and federal guidelines. So that's what this policy frames. So the actual policy itself uses the language from the audit finding and then directs the superintendent, the chief financial officer, and grant management staff to remain in compliance and to utilize this guidance from the Public Education Department, as well as attend the periodic trainings to be able to support this uniform guidance requirement, which is detailed in the audit finding. I'll stand for questions unless it's the pleasure of the board president to read the actual policy in the first reading.
It is not the desire of the present president to read the entire.
I move that we approve the first reading.
And may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you.
I think I just saved us about a half an hour.
The next item is being presented on behalf of Board Member Cashman, and she may want to add to this. And the item is the 2017-28 Instructional Program and Facilities Master Plan Feasibility Alignment Study. The Board of Education directs the superintendent to complete an instructional program and facilities master plan feasibility and alignment study and present findings and recommendations to the Board of Education no later than October 15th, 2017. Ms. Cashman?
So I want to be very plain spoken on what this really means. I asked the superintendent to take, we talked about consolidations and closures, and we took them away from the budget discussion. I don't think we have talked about that we still have more facility need than what we have students or projected students. So I ask that we as a board go ahead and direct the superintendent to do a study away from budget considerations to look at, do we have more facilities than what we have instructional program capacity for? It allows us to go to the Public School Facilities Authority to talk with, or asking the superintendent to go to the Public School Facility Authority to determine what is feasible or not feasible as far as doing renovation in a school versus a rebuild of a school, a complete new school. It would allow us, if it was the board's pleasure, to think about closing or downsizing or right-sizing, whatever you want to say, whatever those words. It would allow us to look at the interzone transfer policy. It would allow us to allow our staff to make decisions of positions on if their schools might be closed, to look district-wide without being in a short time frame. And I heard multiple board members say when we took it off the table at budget time that it was too fast and too soon, but the issue was not gone. And so why I'm asking for this is during the summer, that gives the staff time to do any other things that they need to do to come and present to the board a comprehensive proposal or recommendation for the board to look at and make a decision on. So I'll stand for any questions on this, but I would like the board to approve this study.
Before we have discussion, do I have a motion?
I recommend that we go, can I make the motion?
Yeah.
Stephen, okay. So I recommend that we go ahead and approve this.
Do I have a second?
I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
All right, discussion? Board, Secretary Cashman, and then Board Member Carrillo. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We kinda look the same.
Noble.
I'm just wondering if there's any more sort of information we can say about this in terms of what would be studied, first of all, and second of all, what updates on process, costs, how this is going. This is, I in principle really like this idea. And I just wonder how we, but it's somewhat wide open at this point, and how we will be updated and what specific information we imagine will be studied and brought forward with this.
It was a very wide open thing to give the superintendent and her staff to be able to look at all aspects of our instructional programs and our facilities. I would imagine that we would look at the conditions of our facilities. We would look at where our students reside, whether we would need to do interzone, reshape boundaries. And also, too, one of the things that I would imagine we would want to do as a district. If we have too much capacity and we keep on going and having, you know, more and more facilities that we have to staff as far as students, then we create inequity in the district. We have some schools that have classrooms full to capacity. Other classrooms are not full to capacity. Those are things that create inequity. So this gives the superintendent and her staff to go ahead and look at the facilities. It also gives them some latitude to say, hey, we're looking at this at a very traditional way, and now that we're away from pressure, we can maybe look at, is there any creative uses of the facilities we have? But I think we've known for a long time that we have, and it probably brought it, which was sad, at the law conference. I sat next to a superintendent and I said, how are you weathering the budgets? You know, having very tight budgets. And he said, I hate to tell you, but we're in pretty good shape. And I said, how can you be? And he said, we recognize that we had too much 3 years ago as far as our programs, our staff, and we made a strategic decision to say, as people left, we didn't hire them. We didn't hire more. We looked at our grants, and we made any grants that we got. We said, if you're hired for that, that is a temporary position. It doesn't continue on to a full-time position. While the grant is in place, it will continue. And they said, now we are deciding, which is a good thing, but he said, now we're deciding how we are going to be able to increase our compensation for our staff. And right now, I mean, we don't have those options. So it's a wide area for the superintendent to take a look at. I know they've already done a lot of the work ahead of time, but it gives them a chance, and it gives us a chance as a board not to be where we said, it's too quick, it's too fast. Well, now we have some time to take a look at, you know, what needs to be done to make sure that we use all of our resources wisely.
So Superintendent, I don't know if you can at this stage answer at what updates on process and costs the board might have before the final, between now and October 15th.
I really couldn't tell you that right now. You know, I've had some preliminary conversations with our chief operations officer about an approach that we might want to take. We probably will, not probably, we will discuss this at a cabinet level, looking at program. And there's a variety of things that are, you know, we've consolidated our alternative programs. They are currently being housed in a rented facility, you know, long-term. What should that look like, and what could be done? This notion of a virtual academy, what would that mean if we could actually get that going? Where would you house that? There are educational planners, program planners that have done this kind of work where they look at program and facility, that we may look at possibly in Christie's shop to hire as a consultant to work with us. Probably would develop some sort of ad hoc committee with members of the CRC and in the community and staff. Come up with a table, a timeline of what we want to look at. We probably could present interim reports, but I think that in some ways that might not be good. Might be better to bring the entire report in its complexity. And it has different components. Some of it's very simple. We need to find out from the PSFA what they would approve and not approve, because we did have that issue of, and whether you do a study or not, I'll probably ask that question of PSFA anyway. I mean, it's just prudent. We need to know what those costs are going to be. And, you know, you as a board could just say, we don't care, we don't want to look at this consolidation and don't do it. I mean, it really is just bringing the options of what we're looking at. But the reality, you know, and I was talking to one of the PTC leaders from one of the schools recently, and we were talking about you know, we just finished a bond, but you have another one in 2020. And we had about $140 million in unmet need that was left on the table of health and safety needs. Now those needs are going to be aged by another 3 years. You're going to have new ones that are going to crop up. A new construction on a new elementary school is 18 to 22,000, maybe higher depending on the size. So, you know, it adds up very quickly. And so we do have to be looking at this thing long-term. That doesn't mean necessarily an action would even be taken next year. But I think it's good to know where we are with it. So there will be a lot of thought into the construction of how you frame the problem. It has a lot to do with how your study looks. And so you can't look at this without looking at program. The two work very closely together, particularly as we analyze and continue to look at the number of elementary seats that we have available and the number of students in the elementary schools and where they are in the district. Maybe some of this is adjusted through boundaries, but these are things that we, I think, at the staff level need to study and grapple with and then bring, you know, that data back to you. That's the way I understood it from speaking to board member or Vice President Cashman.
So, and I appreciate the alignment of instructional program with the facilities and that doing this at a time when we have some more time, not under the pressure of budget. I do think the superintendent's exactly right in that how you frame the question is important, and I actually am concerned if we're framing it around, you know, primarily a bond cycle in a few years. I think we have to get off of the wheel that is where we're sort of, I don't know if we're evolving the organization or responding to facilities needs more, and to have some intention behind that evolution of the organization and where it needs to go in terms of instructional programming. And, you know, I've had some level of discomfort that we can't look, or we're not looking at certain schools just because of the facility and, you know, how it all fits together. So I guess that's a piece. And one final question I have, because it strikes me that this is deeply related to a strategic plan. And I guess, Superintendent, my question is, how do you see this in relation to development of a strategic plan?
Well, Madam President, members of the board, if this is something that I think we need to discuss about process, how you want to approach this next phase of your strategic plan. You're finishing the 5 years. You know, you have a point, right? Most of those goals are fairly general. What changes are the tactics, right, and the strategies of how you achieve higher graduation rates, higher attendance rates, higher proficiency rates. They're fairly universal goals. And so I don't know what process you're going to look at in terms of those, how we go about, whether you continue those goals, which would not be a bad thing necessarily. How now a strategy under that strategic plan, that if you look at our strategic plan over the last 5 years, those tactics and strategies and benchmarks changed every couple of years. So you could say that to get, I'm just talking just generically, that to achieve a higher graduation rate, we want to pursue as a tactic expansion of more credit generating options. So maybe that might be virtual school, right? Or it might be alternative programs. So, I mean, they can tie.
Thank you, Madam President.
Board Member Creel?
Just, isn't all this being done already?
Excuse
This
me?
seems redundant. You.
What is the
This seems
question?
redundant.
What seems redundant?
The request for the study here, it just seems like this, you're doing this work ongoing anyway. I mean, it seems like we could ask more for a presentation to the board, but that the work, how is this work not already being done on a weekly basis?
Well, I don't think I can, I don't think I should answer that question.
Well, I'm posing it to you.
Well, but I'm not, this is not my item.
Doesn't matter, I'm posing it to you.
So you're asked, rephrase the question, please.
I'm asking you, how is the elements of this study not already being done within the district and your staff on a weekly basis? I mean, this seems redundant to me. It seems like we could, have a study session on this where you present just, if you want to go ahead and do it, that's fine. I'll probably vote against because I feel like this work is already being done by Cabinet and everybody else, probably on a daily basis, under your direction. I mean, so it just seems superfluous to me.
Well, I believe the way that it was requested is more focused. We just finished going through this process, and it appeared that the board did not have an appetite to pursue this at this particular point in time. We did hear from board members stating, and I think you actually stated as well, that this would have to be studied at some point in time. My understanding is that Vice President Cashman, at some point in time, became sooner more than later. As we discuss this has program implications with it as well. So I think what this does is bring, you're right, these are things that we look at just as a matter of course. What this has done is bring more immediacy, more focus, says bring a recommendation to the board by October around these issues. This might have, if we just did it organically, this might be something that could have come up in 2 years. I think that this is accelerated by the request of the Vice President.
Okay, I mean, I'd be more comfortable rather than having a recommendation being made on the 15th is maybe having a study session around then discussing your findings, and then us kind of going in the same way we did with all of the computer learning and everything. And it just seemed redundant to me that it requires more of a study session. And then also in terms of funding source, operational cost, TBD, it's like, seriously? I mean, anytime we're having staff do a study or something else, because there are only so many hours in a day, means they're not doing something else. So to just kind of have the funding source operational, and because, I mean, we've done this before, and we've always said, no way, cost to be determined. It's like, really? I mean, so if you have, the combined salaries of all these people working a total of, 1,000 hour on this, yeah, this costs a lot of money. Right?
Vice President Cashman?
I think I listened to the discussion we had during the budget. We're going to have this same discussion a year from now. The budget's not getting better. The budget is going to be constricted. We do not have enough funds. I asked for this to be a very focused intent of the staff to come and present to us. And so it is a focus. It's accelerated. It allows us to have some time to plan. It may be that we decide based on recommendations we're not doing anything next year, but we are going to move forward. That would allow and I know it's a very uncomfortable position for many many board members to talk about the word consolidation or closure. It's not, no one in their right mind would bring those words up because you're going to have a reaction to the community. But the other side of it is, we know we have too many seats, too many instructional seats that are not being filled. We are stretching our staff thin by not filling those seats. I don't know how you can say a classroom that has 12 to 15 kids, same grades, same, not specialized kids, average kids, and then say we have a classroom of the same size on a different part of town that has 25 to 30 kids. That is not equitable. I think we need to right size. We need to, it may not be, and why I asked for a more focused approach to this is to go ahead and allow us to have adequate planning time with communities, with our staff, and there's many options. We didn't have all those options when it came before the board. It might be a recommendation that the board might say, yes, in 2 years from now, so we don't accept kindergarten kids into those classrooms. We transition them into the schools that they're going to, that eventually we'll be going to. But, this is why I've brought it here before the board, and the board can say, no, we'll just, maybe it comes up, maybe it doesn't, but it allows no creativity, no planning to go and say, okay, maybe we looked at it from this lens, and now that we're not tied to dollars, and we're looking at student achievement, maybe this is where it gets us. So that's how I'm thinking, Board Member Carrillo.
Any other discussion? Board Member Trio?
Well, yeah, okay, so on
Oh,
one hand.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I was continuing. On one hand, I'm hearing more focus, and on the other hand, I'm hearing it's a very general study, which to me is contradictory. And, I think we've all, during this last budget, recognized that we are going to have to, or we're having the conversation on closure. It's not as if we're trying to avoid it or put it off. It's really incumbent upon staff and the superintendent to determine, if you will, how that transitionally works over the next couple of years. So if, let's see, we're going into 17, 18. So if those schools, let's say, that we talked about, Nava and EG, are going to be closed, no longer be functioning in their present state in 1920, right? We have to transition, and it's, I personally don't think you should start eliminating grades, because then you kind of kill the soul of the school. You want to have these little kinder kids running around, because it's great to have kinder kids running around and putting on performances. But you can transition in a way where perhaps they know where they're going to be going a couple of years from now. This is where you and your brother might go. I don't know. I see this as being redundant, expensive, and taking away from other things. And I'm curious as to what is the goal? What is it we want to find out here that we don't already know? We know that there are class sizes. Actually, there's class sizes on this side of town that are just as big as class sizes on the other side of town. And a lot of that has to do not with equity-related issues. It just happens to do with where kids are going to school, and where you have 2 kinder classes this year, so you're going to have a big first grade, second. It's going to continue up the ladder. But where you had a really small kinder or first to start, you can plan for the fact that we're not going to need 2 6th grade or 5th grade classes coming up, because we see what the enrollment's like. I know you submitted by Maureen Cashman. Recommendation, I assume, is by the superintendent to approve. It says here recommendation, approve.
That's my recommendation.
Well, of course Maureen recommends that it's approved. This is unusual, because I've not, in my 6+ years on the board, not ever seen it presented like this, where there's something you want to, if you're presenting it to staff or to the superintendent, you know, if they're approving it, you know, I can see where this, I just don't, has it ever been presented this way before? Where the superintendent, the approval came from the superintendent. Right.
This was submitted by Maureen Cashman. It wasn't submitted by staff.
Well, what does the superintendent want to do on this?
The pleasure of the board.
Just kick that can.
Don't you hate that?
No, I'm just.
Board Member Trujillo?
I think Board Member Creel brings up a lot of really relevant points, as well as Secretary Noble. I think this happens all the time. I think it's been happening. It's been happening with facility master plans on a regular basis. We've had multiple conversations. I do think that our energies and our resources are better served at this point in either updating or a new strategic plan, because we have reached the limit, and the strategic plan that we had was the vessel that we've used, as general as it may be, that we've used to make sure that we steer the budget, that we steer programs, and everything that we've done over the last almost 5 years now has been tied back to that strategic plan. And I think any strategic plan that's lasted for 5 years, that needs to be either revisited and updated. I think it's a good starting point for discussion, but I think our resources are better served at moving in that direction. And I note that it's part of the retreat conversation at the very least. And so I'm anticipating that we'll have that kind of in-depth conversation here in just a couple of weeks. But, you know, we've got the bond is not until 2020, so there's a significant amount of time in between now and then for us to determine kind of what kind of 2021? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
So
and that was just something I threw in, is just an aside.
Yeah.
That was not
That's-
Ms. Cashman's issue.
My fear in having an October deadline and a new project is that I do believe that we're already doing this, and so I do think also that it's redundant. I also think that it's artificially putting into a small time frame something that I think maybe you want to get to, and I don't think I want to get there. And the reason being is because there's a real philosophical difference in the way that you think about the direction and I think about the direction that the district should go. And that's why I think it more important for me that we do that strategic plan, because if it wasn't a philosophical difference, we would be talking about other schools that are small schools and that need improvement. But we don't talk about other schools that are small schools that need improvement because they're philosophically successful or more successful than schools that have been on the agenda. And so when I say philosophical difference, I mean philosophical difference. And so until we can get to a point that we agree philosophically, I think any plan that would come forward by an October deadline would be void of all of the voices on this board's philosophy of the direction that this district needs to go. And so while I think matching program and building needs is an important conversation for us to have, I think having it separate from that philosophy and from that strategic plan, which should include the philosophy, is too disconnected for me. It's just too disconnected. And so I think it would be
I think it would actually increase inequality for us to have that conversation now versus having the conversation once we figured out what is it that we want to do. I also think when we think in terms of the budget, I'm not convinced that the budget is going to just keep going downhill. There's not much further space for it to go. And so, I'm not ready to flush the toilet and just, let New Mexico go down the river. I think we have a future, and I think we have a bright future, and I don't think we need to just keep planning to cut and cut and cut. There's a number of things that are happening in our community that are really, really positive. We have a high, and I don't know the exact numbers, Secretary Noble may know better, but our housing capacity is beyond what we have the capacity for. We don't have housing for people to live here. And so the conversation to begin to build new housing, which is just going to have to include affordable housing, is still, it's very close. I think we're right on the edge. I look at what's happening on Rafina, and it's incredible. I'm so excited. We're going to have Second Street Brewery within walking distance of my home. Walking distance. And I drive that road as often as I can to see the progress. City Council has voted, and the Economic Development Department is supporting LEDA funds to help move that forward. I just attended a grand opening for Spirits. The gentleman is, yes, and he's brewing what, brandy, or, I mean, it's a whole.
He's brewing something.
Yeah. It's a whole thing off of Airport Road. Off of Airport Road. Meow Wolf, is looking to expand. There's a studio being built for artists right next to where the Second Street Brewery is being built. So there's two huge economic development facilities being built, and Meow Wolf is expanding.
They're even expanding to Albuquerque.
No, they're going to
Been thinking about
expand.
it.
No, they're going to expand here.
Oh, yeah, they probably do both.
We're going to keep them here. Yes, they're
Yeah.
here. And so I think there's good things happening, not just in Santa Fe, but I do think that the state is going to turn a corner. And so I'm just not all the doom and gloom. And I tried to share that optimism. And I'm glad the superintendent worked on a budget that didn't cut back, and that we went ahead and trusted the process and moved on that. I'm trusting the process. I think New Mexico has a future. And so, looking at closing schools or making those kind of big changes when we know that there's a high probability that there's going to be housing that's going to be built that we're going to have for those kids that are going to come. Because if you build it, they will come. And people want to live here in Santa Fe. They want to live here in Santa Fe. And so I just think this is too early of a conversation to have. And so I won't be supporting this. I would support this kind of a conversation that's along with the development or the update of a strategic plan that we can then all be, because I hear our new board member, and I'm so happy to hear you ask questions about, well, where did this come from and why are we doing this? And I think we've spent 7 years getting there, and to have to kind of rethink, how did we get there? Why were we? Because we kind of just take it for granted. We get up here and we vote on things, and Carl says things, and he's got, things listed. Christy has things listed, and it just is, second nature because we've been doing it for so many years.
But to hear that, but why, really makes me feel like, yes, we need to get back all on the same page so that we revisit those whys, because they may have, in fact, changed over the years. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think it's part of a larger discussion, but the way it's couched here, I just can't support it.
And I appreciate your optimistic view. I can look, when we see people come, we can even see our own staff. Our staff cannot afford to live here in Santa Fe. We are not building affordable homes here in Santa Fe. We build some affordable homes. We don't build for the people that are doing the day-to-day work here. They are living in, on the outskirts of Santa Fe. But I hear what you're saying. We do disagree philosophically on this, and I feel that I have, in this community for 20 years, I have always looked in being involved with the public schools for that long. It's been, we have more, and by by making this more general for the staff to focus on it, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be looking, it's not narrowed down to just NAVA and EJ. It's to look at our instructional capacity versus our facilities, and to make the best decision long run for this district. And to think it's going to happen, without some direction from the board, I think we're being naive. But we do disagree philosophically on this.
Board Member Creel.
The timeline, I just wanted to mention that as well, because the October 15, let's face it, July is when everyone in a district, any school district, takes vacations. So I wouldn't want to think we're going to have staff cutting their vacation short, and then when they come back in July, that last week of July, certainly, we're getting ready for school to start. So I just think even the timeline is an overreach for something like this. And then I appreciate the the other points that were made. I mean, on the housing thing, we really, in some way, obviously we don't get involved in housing, but somehow we have to, I don't know, have some joint thing with the city because the net effect of like EJ and Capitol, when they had all those apartments that were built on the other side of St. Francis, right? I mean, it dramatically changed the populations of those schools. And so there just has to, in the area of housing and development, there needs to be more, we need to have more conversations. And you brought up the infill thing. I mean, rather than build another thing on the other side of Airport Road, why not have something that's affordable, infill, so that people don't have to interzone into Carlos Gilbert? And I mean, these have to be partnerships with the city. I know, I've been here 26 years too, and yeah, and they, nobody wants it in their backyard. I know, it's the whole thing, and it's a tough. We are not the city different, okay? We're the city the same. Everyone's NIMBY, everything. That's what makes me crazy sometimes. It's like, but anyway, yeah, the timeline thing is, I really, it would be also too, even if I did support it, I think that October 15th would be way too optimistic of a timeline.
So would you support it with a different timeline?
No, I think it's redundant for all the other reasons.
I figured you would, so.
Any more discussion? I'm going to do this as a roll call, okay? All right, Board Member Creel?
No.
Board Member Trujillo?
No.
Board Member Noble?
No, and I'd like to explain.
Okay.
Okay.
She's going to explain her vote.
Will you explain afterward?
Oh, okay, all right. Board Member Cashman?
Yes.
Board Member Price votes yes. Okay.
I really do like the idea of doing this with some flexibility around timing, and I appreciate Vice President Cashman's willingness to maybe think about the time frame that was a question that came up for me, and really, it's, what I heard from Board Member Carrillo and especially Board Member Trujillo about the alignment with the strategic plan that I think swayed me, and I guess my hope is that we can continue this discussion at our workshop and figure out a way to do this work in an integrated way with an update to a strategic plan.
Your vote? Yes, yes, it was three, it's 3-2. It's 3-2, so it doesn't carry. All right. All right, board position statement opposing bilingual multicultural education rule change.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The board asked at the last meeting for us to write a letter. The letter is attached for signature by the board president, but it would require the board to vote to have this sent.
I move that we approve this, but I would like to, does it say in here that the board voted? I think if we could just add a sentence in that the board met on June 6th and approved the submittal of this letter, and then go on to say.
So it's not just on me and my signature.
Yes.
We could add the CC for the board members.
Yeah, that'd be great, Superintendent. But I do move that this be approved with that amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I don't know that I fully understand it. And I brought this up in board review. What is it that PED wants to do and why, and what is it we are opposed to and why? Because relative to bilingual education and the presentation that we were given, I don't know, it seems like 3 months ago or so now, that there were 6, I think I counted 6 that evening, bilingual programs, and that we were having in our public schools, and that I felt that that was a waste of money and resources because of the amount of resources it takes for each of those programs to be administered, have accountability, all of the different pieces that go in, and that there perhaps were redundancies in the programs and that relative to what perhaps our goals are for each of the programs. So this is not one of the issues I am most articulate or knowledgeable on, so I just need more explained here to me.
You want to?
Board Member Trio.
Thank you, Board President. My understanding is that there's 5 different
Models.
models. Thank you. I was going to say, a program is not the word. 5 different models, and the models, and I'll let the superintendent talk about those because I'm not as good on that. But the idea of eliminating 2 of those models does in fact stop providing a model program that's been developed over like a period of 50 years that works for students, that works for some of our students. And it's literally about 40% of our students who would be impacted by this. And the reason that, and so I'll let the superintendent explain that, but the reason that I think this letter is important is because of the new law. And no, the new State Rules Act. And this was one of my mothership legislation that I've worked on for 7 years and was the last bill signed by the governor. But this, because they opened up feedback and public comment until August is what I understand, they've rolled themselves into the new law being applicable. And that means that unlike what currently is happening, public comment has to be kept. And so the more public comment there is, the more opportunity there are for agencies that work very hard to defend bilingual programs to take this to court and say the PED's decision to eliminate these two positions was arbitrary and capricious. And so getting this on record is incredibly important as this new law comes into effect. With that said, that's just kind of my platform. I will defer to the superintendent to explain.
So I think there's two
Is
philosophical.
it choice also? Like, is this, a lot of this is about?
I think
Okay, that's
that,
what-
I
okay.
think that a big part of this is local school choice. And for some communities, the enrichment and maintenance are very important. And particularly in Native American communities. One of the things that the department did that I thought was a little underhanded, for lack of a better term,
You could call it shady.
it was that they advised many districts to not apply for these two models. So our former director did not apply for those two models. So I think they'll come back and say, well, school districts didn't apply for them. They were told that they wouldn't be funded, is my understanding. But regardless, so it's about choice. It's about finding the models that work best for your student population. And I think that, to me, those are the most critical issues.
That satisfies my question. I mean, thank you, both of you.
I have a motion and a second. Do you want to do roll call or should I do this? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? President also votes aye. It passes. And I can put my signature on it.
We'll fix it. We'll add those changes.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right, for board discussion, I just want to remind you that by the next school board meeting, I need to have the names for your appointments to the CRC and the audit committee. I got one already today. You sent to me the CRC, but you didn't send audit. Well, you should have sent it to me. Okay. And also, I want to remind you, please, to call Timothy. And I think you sent that email about.
I didn't get, I was
Oh,
going
that's
to,
okay.
but I didn't have
I've done
time
it.
today.
I just did it.
Sorry.
I saved you having to do that. Any other adjustments to the calendar?
And there's
Oh,
two questions.
oh, I'm sorry,
and then
I'm
I do
sorry.
have a request.
All right, Steve, board member,
James.
it's getting late.
Yeah, sorry.
Steve,
Board discussion.
Steve.
Board discussion, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, since you brought it up, the retreat, I have two things relative to the retreat. I have two things relative to the retreat. Does everyone even want to have a retreat? Am I the only one that does not want to have a retreat?
Well,
I don't want to, but am I the only one?
You don't have to come.
It's not what I asked. I mean,
Well,
just,
and that's what I'm saying. I want to have a, I do.
I'm going to show up for a retreat. If you don't show up for a retreat, things might be.
no, I'm hearing you,
so-
but it's just
so-
sometimes, I wondered, and the question was posed to me, and so
Oh,
I
it's
just
for you.
figured. So anyway, okay, I would like on the retreat agenda, though, not to include the strategic plan. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's something that we need to discuss here.
I think that's something you should talk to Tim about, because he's going to ask you.
Well, I will
what
talk to
you-
Tim, but I'm talking
it-
to y'all here now because you're the board.
Because we agreed that he would speak to you all individually and find out what you want on the agenda, and you've just expressed what you want on the agenda, okay? And so, and then it is agreed that he will then get back with Veronica and with Secretary Noble and me when we set the agenda.
Okay,
Can I speak on that point?
when I'm done on them. I'm speaking about what I don't want on the agenda for the reason that a retreat, while being a public meeting, is not, let's face it, it's not attended by the public. And so for us to have on our agenda, as I saw it, strategic plan, and this is the only time I can talk to all five of us at once, is, because even though I'll talk to Tim and he'll talk to everybody, this is the only time I can address all of us. I don't think it's appropriate that we discuss anything relative to the strategic plan at a meeting at which the public is not going to attend. Sure, they're able to, but they're not.
It's not going to be the be-all and end-all. We're not going to solve the strategic plan in 3 hours. You know that, and I know that. It's just a
That's
discussion.
not what I'm saying, though. I'm
I
saying
know
that.
it's not what you're saying.
Okay, I would like the rest of the board to consider that this item should not be part of the retreat. It should be something that we work on in public, even if it's just discussing how we're going to work on it, because that's what we've done in the past. We discuss in a study session, what's the process going to be? Are we going to involve the public? All of these different questions that come up. I do not believe, and I would like you to consider, not having this part of the, I'll walk out on that part of the retreat, actually, if you do, because I believe it's that inappropriate. That's something that we should discuss in open meeting like this. So that's all I have to say on that, and you said, Linda, that.
We
Yeah,
can't
just-
vote on it anyway.
Just on that.
I know that.
Yeah.
Board President, on that point,
Sure.
The retreat will be an open meeting, and so it is open, and I will have to say that I partially agree with Board Member Carrillo, and I will talk to Tim about that, but I think that we need to talk about the process and set up a timeline for a strategic plan, so that's what I'd like to talk about. I understand we're not going to get to any meat or potatoes in this, but I do want to talk about what's the process, how do we move forward, and how do we begin it?
and just
Yes.
to clarify on that point, that was my item that I asked, and the reason that I just wanted to know, how do you want to proceed? And it could be one sentence that you say, that we want to do it in a study session, fine. I just need to know, I don't know what to do with it. And we're trying to get the end data points, and, I've been working on Project North Star on the guiding principles, but I do need to find out, I just don't know what process you want to use, is all I was asking.
Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Board-
still had items.
Just
So.
Cashman, and then you,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
Trujillo.
So on the strategic plan, I agree this time with Board Member Trujillo. I think we need to talk about what the timeline might be, but, or the process, but not the details. The details need to be worked out in study sessions, but I think we need to give some guidance to the superintendent on, are we asking for the old strategic plan to just be tweaked? And in some areas, I think it just needs to be tweaked. But I would like to understand the strategic plan in relation to Project North Star, because to me, I think those two are very similar, and we just need to start moving forward on a plan. So I think the general guidelines, but not the details, just some general guidelines, I think should be discussed at the retreat.
I think that's what I just said. Okay. Board Member Carrillo?
Of course, it's an open meeting. Of course, we're not going to try to determine any details. But in the past, even the determining of, are we going to have 2 public meetings where we go out in high school gyms on 2 different parts of town? This is our deadline to have this. Even all of that has been done at a meeting easily accessible to the public. I'll say that instead of public meeting, because no one's coming to La Fonda, no one came to the Eldorado, or not Eldorado, Buffalo Thunder, and nobody came to the, what's it called? The learning place. And they're not gonna. So in a sense, we're kind of skirting the public thing. And I believe that everything relative to the strategic plan needs to be done in an accessible public way. And having it on the agenda there, please consider it, I don't believe does that. The other items that I have here are, what about piloting a program, or maybe the superintendent could even look into or knows of one, is there a district somewhere in the country that's eliminated Ds? I would be curious as to how they rolled that out, because D. I mean, Maureen and I have talked about this a lot. If you want to get, yes, our graduation rate might take a hit for a little while, so be it. We'll be the district in the state that raised the bar.
I do have one, I have to tell a story.
I know, but you're interrupting. When someone interrupts you, you go
I'm
ballistic.
sorry, no, I don't go ballistic, sweetheart.
Okay. Sweetheart, even.
Yes, even.
Man,
Even.
if I had ever said that to
Even.
you, if I had said.
I would have said, thank you very much.
You would not.
Yes, I would.
Okay, so the piloting the ABCF, I do want to hear the story. Where's our student board members? We have not gotten a presentation. What the heck's going on with that?
School is over.
I know that, but the thing is, they're getting a credit, okay? And I feel like this year it fell apart because Gino wasn't overseeing it.
Well, I don't know
Okay,
what the expectations
they're
are.
supposed to have done
Yeah.
a year-end presentation to the board about, remember Maya and, yeah, so what the heck? Okay, they're all juniors, they can come back and do it the first board meeting in August.
They should get Ds.
They,
You know, there's so many things, you know, that I'm learning as we go through, but no one ever brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
I never really even stopped to think
Yeah.
about it. The way that you guys use the student board members is very different than when I was here the first time.
Yeah.
When I was here the first time, they were much more engaged in discussion. They couldn't vote, but they gave a lot of opinion on just about every action item. And so I just found out recently about the grade and how all of that was supposed to be. We will next year do this very differently and have someone assigned, but I didn't even know. So I apologize,
Right.
because that should have been me, but it was never brought to my attention. But we'll fix it.
And this is mostly for Maureen. When I was taking, geometry in high school, we had two different teachers, okay? And the first teacher, I got an A, and the second teacher literally despised me, okay? And I know when it's just between me and, students often say that, but she really did. And you have to take the New York State Regents exam, which is very rough. And so I just disengaged from the course, but what she didn't realize is I was taking Stanley Kaplan Geometry 2 every Saturday for 3 hours. And so I got an 89 on the exam, and they have to pass you if you pass the New York State exam. So it brought to mind, yes, sometimes there is conflict between teachers and students. But I had the New York State Regents to fall back on. Oh, Board Member Trujillo.
Thank you. Superintendent, I have heard from, I think a constituent as a state representative, but not a constituent on the school board. Nonetheless, she lives here, she's a constituent of someone. And she is genuinely continues to be concerned that the Lafarge Library lease agreement between the city and the school district has not been finalized. And so I'm just bringing that forward. I don't know where the cog has broken, but would love some update on that. And then if I can reassure this individual that something is in fact going to happen.
So, Madam President, Board Member Trujillo, I too have been very stressed out about it. My understanding, I did have a conversation with staff that it should be ready to come, hopefully, to the board at the next board meeting.
Yes. But for the record, we have no intention of pulling that lease away from the city. The Lafarge Library will remain. And
That is our understanding,
that is our
correct, Ms.
understanding.
Yonda?
And anything else would be the city's decision.
We're not going to build a casino there?
We're not going to build a casino there. Okay, so thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate that. I will give her a call. And then I had, at the law conference, and I don't know if Vice President Cashman got to see this, but the president, the National School Boards Association president, was just quite engaging. And he did something that I would like to see us do. And that is that students entering kindergarten this year are going to be the class of 2030. And he had interviewed and, had them, the sound and the lip sync didn't go together, but you got the idea of it. And as a promotion for where we're going, I would love to see us focus attention on this year being the year of 2030 students. Like, where are we going to be in 2030? Because it's just like it's knocking literally on our door as soon as those kids come into school on the first day, in August, and it would be fabulous if we could kind of, begin a process of monitoring them the first day of school, and maybe even, every year thereafter until 2030. It would be a nice time capsule, but I would love to see us get some footage, and now is the time to do that, so.
Maybe we should even do a time capsule.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we should do a time capsule. But we can't forget where it is. Superintendent Garcia.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, on advanced planning, the staff does not feel a need for a study session on the 12th.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's up
I
to
think,
you.
I think that's a go. I think everybody nodded, so. I know you don't like consensus, but I think we have consensus
not
here.
that I don't like
Okay.
consensus,
To cancel the meeting, you'll accept consensus. All right, are we ready? Board Member Carrillo, are you ready? Oh.
Just to verify, the audit committee on July 20th, that's correct? Okay.
Ready? Yes. That's it.